Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming along to this last session of today, this last session within the climate emergency and sustainability stream. In this session is where we're going to focus on sustainable homes for the future, PassivHaus. Now, if you've been to some of the earlier sessions today, you'll have seen that we touched on building warmer, greener and more efficient. PassivHaus is an embodiment of that, building warmer, greener and more efficiently and having more efficient housing. It's environmentally friendly, it reduces carbon footprint, and the reason we get to that through PassivHaus is that the buildings are created to rigorous energy efficient design standards, I should say, to deliver comfort to the homeowners, to reduce fuel costs and to eliminate the need for retrofit costs, and ultimately all of these things to help support tackling fuel poverty. It's quite a short session today. For the last session, folks, we've got 3 presentations. I'm delighted we've got 3 speakers, 3 colleagues along from different areas. We've got Katrina Jordan, who's going to introduce the work from Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, which is really innovative. We've got Jim Brown from one of our contractors, from Stewart and Shields Limited, and he will speak about his experiences in delivering PassivHaus in Scotland. We then have Claire Hosey, who will tell us about another of our contractors, Ashley's experience on delivering PassivHaus under our Scotland Excel framework. Before I move on to the presentations, and I recognise some people will have heard this message at a few previous sessions, I'll just quickly go through the housekeeping. Your microphone should be muted. That's to avoid echo and feedback for others, which when you sometimes have large audiences the way we have today, that can happen. So we've muted the microphones. In addition, I think there's still some cameras on. Can I ask everyone to turn off their cameras, and that will help mitigate for any issues around bandwidth restrictions. In terms of questions, we're going to go through each of the presentations before we have a short time for questions at the end. 2 ways in which you can put your questions to the speakers. You can, as we go through, if you wish, you can add them to the chat, and we'll pick them up at the end, as I say. As an alternative to that, and what we would encourage you to do is, if there's any questions, you just hold them, take a note of them and put your hand up at the end, and that allows us to hopefully have a bit more interactive Q&A. We can do that at the end. I should remind everybody that this session, along with all others, it's being recorded and it will be made available on our Academy after the conference, similarly for all questions and answers. So, short session, if I can just now quickly hand over to Katrina from Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you. Hi everyone, thanks for having me this afternoon. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that okay, and let me know if you can't. So our focus at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre is assisting the built environment in becoming net zero. Following government guidelines, all buildings within Scotland are to be zero carbon by 2045. And by 2030, the Scottish Government has a target to reduce up to carbon emissions by 70%. Construction Scotland Innovation Centre has 4 key areas working towards a zero carbon built environment: digital transformation, accelerating industrialisation, building sustainably, and that cultural change. To help achieve that, we work through 4 key vehicles: connecting the ecosystem to engage to industry and innovation, working in collaboration with on projects with industry, academia and the public sector, giving them a safe environment and a space equipped in our innovation factory to access a range of advanced equipment. And then finally, the Future Skills programme, supporting industry and the cultural change through future skills. And that's where I'm involved. As a Future Skills Manager at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, My main role is to deliver programmes for skills now and for the future within the construction industry and built environment. The project I'm going to talk about this afternoon and what I'm currently leading on is a Passive House in Practice programme, which is aimed to align to the 2045 targets and Sustainable Development Goals. The programme also aims to tackle issues such as skill shortages within the construction industry, improving collaborative working practices, and throughout this programme we aim to enable skills opportunities for construction and built environment workers, enabling them to upskill, reskill, retrain in Passive House standards, working towards that zero target goal. And also with the ambition to secure future work in a transient industry. The Passive House in Practice programme is funded through the Scottish Funding Council, the Transition Training Funding, and its remit is to upskill, reskill anyone in Passive House standards who's at risk of redundancy, unemployment, or wants to retrain multi-skill in Passive House standards. How we've approached this project is we're delivering training, and we're delivering it through three main vehicles: online Passive House training, which has been through live training sessions. We're also going to be delivering practical face-to-face training and interactive learning that can be accessed anytime, anywhere, and delivering immersive learning through that vehicle. So I'm just going to look at each aspect of training and how we have approached it. We've been delivering the BRE Introduction to Passive House, and these are half-day sessions that have ran through the month of May, delivering an introduction to Passive House standards. We're also delivering the AECB Carbon Light Contractor training. We've ran one session. There are 2 half-day online sessions. We've got another session this week, and then following that, a further 2 sessions in June and July, which I'll talk about that in a little bit more. But the Carbon Light Contractor training followed up with a practical day session, which we're delivering at the Innovation Factory. We put someone in a position where they'd be able to then go on and sit the revision session and the exam to become a certified tradesperson in Passive House. We're also running a mini-series sessions, 1 hour webinar sessions that we've ran through May, and we'll run in June as well. And we've covered a lot of areas here, which we have 2 sessions next week, and we have heat recovery. So we have Stefan Huber, and he's going to be talking all things ventilation, and we'll also have a session from the ecological buildings systems talking all things air tightness. We're also offering practical training sessions in Passive House standards. So the Carbon Light Practical Contractor training would be a follow-up session from the online training, and then we're running Construction Scotland industry training. So for industry, we're doing a specific session for industry, educators, and then women in construction. We have been developing and constructing Passive House training rigs in collaboration with John Gilbert Architects, Stewart and Shields, and we have also, we're developing 4 training rigs with 4 different methods of timber construction. One being the Jai stud, the Passive House system, timber kit, traditional timber frame system, zip panels, and a cross-laminated timber rig. This practical hands-on training session will cover key areas such as construction techniques, MVHR, insulation, looking at different insulation types and how to fit the insulation correctly to achieve that Passive House standard. Also looking air tightness taping. And these will be 1-day practical sessions that will be delivered in June and July. We're also delivering interactive immersive learning in Passive House. We're currently developing through the Passive House system augmented reality. So when you're in the Innovation Factory, learning about PassivHaus. Practically, you'll be able to see PassivHaus in an augmented environment, and that will be able to allow you to see the construction of the passive house, heat flow movements, all through an augmented environment. Our immersive learning, which we're developing modules, 3 modules in PassivHaus standards, one particularly focusing on PassivHaus principles, PassivHaus in practice, so a more technical aspect in PassivHaus, and then finally PassivHaus journey within Scotland. These will be available to access from our learning platform, and they'll consist of interactive videos, slide deck, and quizzing throughout, and on completion you would receive a certificate of completion. Also, our webinar content will be hosted there as well. PassivHaus in practice we've been collaborating with industry experts in PassivHaus standards and digital technologies to develop and deliver the content. So we've been working with, which I've mentioned, Ecological Building Systems, John Gilbert Architects, Robert Gordon University, in particular Gokai Device, Napier University, Oberlander Architects, Stewart and Shields, the Warm Company and the BRE, and Digital Knots have been creating our mixed reality environment. In developing and creating these skills programs, for example, we've been working with the Warm Company to develop and adapt the contractor training to be more interactive, engaging for participants through feedback sessions by adopting a variety of different training methods. Construction industry addresses a range, such as a response to online learning and future-proofing training opportunities. Everybody learns in different ways. PassivHaus recognises the need to adopt these different pedagogies through online face-to-face training and digital technologies. And this is just a little snapshot of our training rigs just now under construction. So on the top left, you can see we have our CLT, and then we have our PassivHaus system here. And then you can just see the timber frame one, the smaller image in the centre. Well, thank you. I hope that's given you a bit of awareness or insight into what we're doing currently at the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Katrina. It certainly does give a good insight to that. I'm going to move quickly on to Jim, and I'm sure there'll be a number of questions at the end for that. Thank you for that.
You ready for me now, yeah?
You can start, Jim, yes.
Okay, right. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you all on the internet. If I can just introduce myself, I'm Jim Brown, Business Development Director, and Brian Jukes, who's just out of camera, who will be here to help me on the question and answers when it comes to any technical amounts. We were asked by Scotland Excel to put across the benefits of PassivHaus, whilst at the same time introduce Stewart and Shields to you and highlight the experience that we've had in actually building to this standard. So we'd like to thank Scotland Excel for the opportunity, and here we go. It's actually nice that we can work together, that a contractor can work together with a framework provider and be able to bring things together in one simple package. You can now buy PassivHaus through Scotland Excel. Now, the first thing that everybody needs to know about PassivHaus, you'll see all these wonderful graphs and things that go up around the places. PassivHaus is not something to be frightened of, it's something to embrace. It's both the future of construction, and it's also the present for an increasing number of contractors and end users. It involves change, and therefore it's something people actually resist. But that means extra work, uncertainty and learning. Certainly true in the construction industry, where people tend to stick with what they know. If it was good enough for my granddad, it's good enough for me. Well, unfortunately, no, it's not. It's not a step into the unknown, but it can be a bit daunting. But what we hope, we can address any concerns that you have throughout this session, and especially through the question and answer at the end. So who are Stewart and Shields? That's a good question. Let me try to explain. Right? We're not defined by turnover. We're not defined by any of the other judgmental factors that people tend to put on contractors. Big is not always beautiful. Trust me, look at me. We began back in the 1950s, and we're now trading into the third generation of the Shields family. We started from humble beginnings, that's for sure, but we were based on firm and secure family values. And this honesty and integrity remains at the core of our values that we take forward. We pride ourselves on giving all of our clients direct access to our main board directors. For example, our construction director, Richard Shields, that you can probably hear in the background, is a main board director who has oversight on every contract we have on the go. This ensures a quick response to any problems or incidents, which results in rapid decisions and corrective actions being taken. That's the advert for us. So back in the early 2000s, Stewart and Shields were doing a lot of energy improvements, everything from EWI to whole house renovations. This focus made us the ideal candidate to be chosen for what was our first venture into the world of PassivHaus. This was a brilliant block of flats designed by the renowned architect Gokaj Davici, who I've heard mentioned already. It's sited in Dunoon and it's called our Cranach, or as everybody in here calls it, I cannot say it because I can't pronounce our Cranach correctly. Although it's not certified, it was the first PassivHaus block built in Scotland. PassivHaus didn't exist over here in those days, so we didn't know what it was. But please remember one thing. If a building is not certified as PassivHaus, it is not PassivHaus. There is no such thing as PassivHaus tendencies, a bit like PassivHaus, or along the lines of, we do some of those things, it either is or it isn't. The fact that our Cranach was the most energy efficient building in the whole of Europe at the time it was constructed is irrelevant as far as PassivHaus is concerned. It's sad but not true. It was never assessed as PassivHaus, therefore it isn't PassivHaus. But moving on from that, let me try to explain what PassivHaus is. PassivHaus is an absolute standard, and it is one that is externally certified. It's just like an MOT on the vehicle. It is independently assessed against set measurements. It isn't just maybe this, it either is or it isn't. The absolute beauty of PassivHaus today, for the audience that's listening to me later on, is that it meets the EASH requirements to well beyond the known 2035 requirements. And it meets this without any need for upgrades. There is no upgrading on a PassivHaus. So when you compare the cost of building to PassivHaus to the cost of the normal building, please realize you will more than recover this, especially if you look at the total cost of ownership of a property over, say, 60 years, even over 50 years. It's genuinely felt the premium paid will be more than recovered. Savings are made through lower maintenance costs, the reduction of replacement windows, boilers, etc. And also by using air source heat pumps, you can do away with gas. Therefore, there's no need to replace it when future regulations dictate that that's what you must do. Basically, all conventional houses being built in Scotland today will require extensive upgrading work to be carried out in order to meet the known changes that come about with EASH in 2035. The cost of the upgrade work will not only narrow the gap, it negates it, and it avoids any disruption to the tenants, etc. Stewart and Shields have adopted PassivHaus as our chosen method of construction. All of our employees have been trained to work into the 5 pillars of PassivHaus. Our apprentices know no other form of construction. They adhere to the 5 pillars, especially air tightness and no thermal bridging. They are all trained in our training centre in Kelburn, where there are rigs, as you've been seeing, are being brought about in Seasick. The culture we endeavour is a no-blame culture. Mistakes happen, right? So don't hide them, highlight them now, so that they can be rectified immediately in a very low-cost way. If I can blow our own trumpet just for a second. Stewart and Shields recognise that PassivHaus eradicates fuel poverty in all of those buildings, and it has a very positive effect on child poverty, 2 of the key government objectives. We work with charities such as Street Soccer and the Abalour Trust to give job opportunities to disadvantaged young people. These people can see for themselves the benefits they bring to their own communities as they're working on houses in that community. We're well at the teams of projects that we've built so far, and we're proud of what we've achieved. We'll answer any questions again in the question and answers if we want to. But we've completed 32 properties, and there's another 106 under construction or in immediate planning. These built properties include the current largest site in Scotland, which is sadly only 10 houses. Now, that is sad. It should be much, much bigger than that. This will happily soon be surpassed by a couple of other contractors who have sites on the way, and we've got a site of 76 coming in the very early part of next year. Passive House is a way of life, and once you get into it, you will appreciate the logic of the change. Once tried, customers seldom go back, and it's also the case with our workforce, who would need to unlearn their skills to go back to building conventionally. Every completed Passive House project helps to reduce the price of as economies of scale come into effect. The more suppliers there are, the more competition there is, bringing down the prices. The more these people sell, the more their own costs dissipate. If you all adopt Passive House after listening to me and the other presenters, this will add to that momentum. That concludes my little slot. Just to say that you can contact myself or Brian Duke through Scotland Excel if you need any more information of our guidance. May I just thank SXL for the forum today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks to you, Jim, for that, and we'll speak a little bit later when we get to the Q&A session as well, and I'll catch you further. I'm going to move quickly on to Claire, who's going to give us an update on some of the work that Ashley have been undertaking in terms of Passive House. So if we can just hand over to yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
I've just seen if I have to share the screen, 2 seconds. Just make sure everybody can see that okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Claire Hosey. I'm the business coordinator with Ashley Scotland Limited, and I'm here today with our technical assistant Gary Cowan. So I'm just going to tell you a wee bit about Ashley and a wee bit about the kind of challenges and benefits that we've experienced in our recent kind of construction with Passive House. So Ashley Building, we're a main contractor. We were established in 2001. We've got offices in Prestwick and Dumfries, but we deliver all sorts of projects throughout the central and southwest of Scotland. We've got a wide and varied portfolio of works. We deliver from housing houses to schools to community buildings, you name it, we'll build it. We've got over 170 employees and 110 self-employed operatives. We're proud of our apprenticeship programme, we're award winners, and we're also currently Passive House Trust members as well. So what is Passive House? I'm not going to stay too long in this because our previous presenters have already kind of touched on what Passive House is and what it means. But to achieve the Passive House standard in the UK typically involves accurate design modelling using the Passive House planning package, very high levels of insulation, extremely high performance windows with insulated frames, airtight building fabric, thermal bridge free construction, and a mechanical ventilation system with highly efficient heat recovery. So it's all about us trying to keep everything in low costs and all the kind of heat and everything inside. But why choose Passive House? So we look to see why more and more of our clients and customers are looking to see why Passive House is important. So Passive House is building regulations are tightened, requiring more energy efficient buildings, in Scotland targeting zero carbon new homes by 2045. So Passive House makes these more affordable, low energy buildings. Many conventional buildings designed and built in the past few years are demonstrating a performance gap. So we've noticed that there's performance gaps with regards to energy use, ventilation and indoor air quality, thermal comfort and overheating. So Passive House makes us allowed to hit these challenges and provide ways to hit these challenges and provide ways for us looking to how to achieve ways for houses to be more efficient and energy efficient. Passive House was developed to close the performance gap. This is quality assured throughout. So there's Passive House standard and certification that you need to meet requirements. And we've also noted the benefits of Passive House to our clients. So comfortable and healthy, very low energy, high quality, affordable, environmentally friendly, and meets and exceeds UK policy requirements. So all these benefits are really important to us achieving the Scotland new sustainability standards. Everybody's looking for ways to go more green and energy efficient in this day and age. So there's some myths about Passive House. Passive House buildings are too expensive. Yes, at the original cost, they are slightly higher, but you reap the awards later on. So Passive House buildings have become more affordable and they require around 90% less heating and energy than conventional buildings. This means that you'll save more money annually in operating costs. So although it's a larger initial investment, it's definitely got a beneficial cost at the end of the projects. Passive House buildings are difficult to build. If they're well designed and you know that you're designing it to Passive House at the start of a project, then you can put all these different regulations and different design methods into the start, which means they're easier and the process goes smoother. There's all these elements that you put in with regards to evidence and pictures, and these are all stated in the standard Passive House documentations. Passive House buildings are difficult to design. So designing Passive House for the first time is, yes, indeed daunting. We thought the same, but as we started to see the process and the construction process, we realised that it's not that much different from building a more house. It's just more airtightness, rigorous, and different things that involve that you need to make sure that it's high quality and that you can really tackle all the needs of the Passive House design at the start. So the key areas of Passive House delivery. So we recognise the key deliverables centre around accurate design modelling using a Passive House planning package, very high levels of insulation, extremely high performance windows with insulated frames, an airtight building fabric, thermal build free, a mechanical ventilation system with highly efficient heat recovery, rigorous airtightness section. So within our projects just now, we've got an airtightness champion that we put on our project that ensures that the 3 separate tests of this is all done, and it's done with evidence, which we always upload into the Passive House planning package. We always have to upload required evidence because you need to make sure that you get off that Passive House certification, as is previously described in the previous presentation, that is key. If you don't have the Passive House certification, then you've not built Passive House. And we've also need to get an independent Passive House certifier to ensure that that has been completed to the requirements. Passive House project stages are the same as any typical construction project following the REBA plan of work. However, it's got greater accuracy in design and prediction of energy performance. Everybody always thinks innovation equals higher costs. There's ways to be more innovative and have not as higher costs. So we've kind of like optimising design. So optimise the design where possible. Solar gains, thermally efficient massing, scale and form, and simple detailing. Simple is best. So we've noticed with the Passive House that it's not too complex. Simple is the best way to construct this and the best way to be more efficient. Earlier is better. The earlier commitment to Passive House and the less costly the project would be. So it's key that when you've got development in mind that you think of Passive House at the earlier stage, including design team, contractor, suppliers, etc., because this makes it less costly when changing your mind down the line. Design development, everybody involved in the design along with clients, designers and construction is key. We've got a number of different people and we've all been involved early on in the project. It's really made it for a smooth process. And education, making sure that everybody knows what Passive House is, how you need to be delivered to Passive House, and make sure that you've got the supply chain around you that can meet the key variables for PassivHaus as well. So it's really key that we educate and make sure not only our own staff and operatives are educated, but our supply chain are aware of the PassivHaus requirements and qualities as well. You don't want anybody to make any high costly mistakes. On the selection of subcontractors and supply chain, when we first won our first PassivHaus project through Scotland Excel with Longmeadow and Dumfries, we thought, do we have a supply chain and subcontractors that can meet requirements of PassivHaus? It was clearly identified at the start that our supply chain have already been doing a number of things in the relation for PassivHaus. So whether it's sustainable developments or green efficient homes, they all have what they can do as PassivHaus standards. We've picked partners with experience with PassivHaus for our first project because they help us guide through and we can learn from each other. The early involvement with our supply chain and subcontractors really helped us set the expectations of quality of workmanship, and we found that our key supply chain partners are widely experienced. And we created a series of demonstration and toolbox talks as well that allowed us to reiterate how important the quality and airtightness parts were without the PassivHaus construction. We've also looked at the benefits and key considerations. So low energy bills and lower carbon emissions, warm snug rooms without any drafts, cleaner, healthier air quality inside, low maintenance costs, less technology to go wrong. So that leads to less defects in customer turn maintenance, peace and quiet when the windows are shut, more wall spaces, you don't need any radiators, so giving more rooms for furniture and sofa, etc. So we've now currently on the project of delivering one PassivHaus, and we've just won a framework to deliver 4 more different development sites. So we can see that this is increasing and the need for PassivHaus houses and schools is actually starting to go up. So we really are starting to educate ourselves on all the different benefits and key considerations that not only for the construction company, but for our clients as well. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation today. And if anybody has any questions, then please ask away.
Thank you, Claire. I know you were a little bit pushed for time there and you sensed that. You went through that as quickly as you possibly.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I just
No,
noticed it were 25 to 5. So
very much appreciated. Thank you for that, Claire. And obviously thanks to all of our speakers who have tried to cram in so much into quite a short session, to Katrina, to Jim, and to you, Claire and Gary as well, for preparing that to get us through it almost on time. So we've got another few minutes to take some questions. I've got to actually say that we need to close by 16:40, so it is only a few minutes, folks. I will ask if there's anyone wants to put their hand up first of all before I go to some of the questions that I see on the chat. There's a fair few in the chat. So I'm not seeing any, I'm just very conscious of time. So I'm going to go to the chat. And it's first of all, there's a question directed to yourself, Jim, from Bridget Lambert. Bridget's our Corporate Procurement Manager at Renfrewshire Council. And you mentioned about eradicating fuel poverty. It's an objective for so many of us. Question here is, can occupier behaviours impact on the efficiency of the PassivHaus buildings? And if so, is industry able to help support with the adoption of positive approach to provide education, etc., such that they don't impact on the efficiency?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and the way I would address that is by saying we always produce a manual, if you like, as to how people can do it. It's an education system, you know, of showing people how to do it, getting them to understand the recirculation of air rather than having windows open or closed or heating sort of belting away. The whole ethos of PassivHaus is it delivers you a house that is at, if your chosen temperature is 20 degrees, that's what it'll be, right? And it remains that way. Now, it's helping to teach the tenants that that's what the case is. And we have a handbook that we hand over, which says, don't go messing about with the wonderful space age thing on air source heat pumps or on the I'm stuck for it. What's it called? MVHR. because they tend to mess about with things. The less they do, the better it is, and they'll, you know, they will educate themselves that way. So we provide support for 12 months until the occupiers are confident, okay? And we have a young lady called Marina McLeod who heads up that department, and she liaises with them at regular intervals to find out if they're having any problems. And that comes standard with the handover of the house.
Thank you very much for that full answer, Jim. I think that gives everything that Bridget was looking for there. There's one other question, and it's been raised by Stuart Calderwood. I'm not sure it's for you guys in the panel. It's maybe actually one for us in procurement, public procurement, where Stuart's asking a very valid question, but you guys might have a view. Where can Passive House be mandated in public procurement as add to that as the standard without giving equivalency? So Stuart recognises that it's an internationally recognised standard, but it does exceed basic law, and sometimes in public procurement we take the safe approach. Where we're in doubt, we will use equivalency. I don't know if the panel have any views or thoughts on that. If not,
it should be. There's no reason why people can't specify Passive House, right? It should be. It meets all of the wonderful things. What you have to do is to turn the question round and say, what are the things that the government wish to address? Child poverty, fuel poverty, yeah, all of these things. And I can see heads nodding on my screen in front of me. Passive House directly addresses these. It eradicates fuel poverty, because you're going to save 90 to 95% of the cost of fuel, right? Now, if you relate that to the average social house, that's going to put about £1,000 back into that family's pocket. Not only will it eradicate the fuel poverty, it helps child poverty.
Absolutely. Thank you for concisely answering, coming back to that as well, Jim. So I'm very conscious of time, folks. Apologies, we don't have time for any more questions at this point. I'm going to have to close it up by thanking again all of the speakers for going through so much detail in so little time, but I'm sure the audience fully appreciates what you've tried to communicate and what you have given us. Thank you very much. It then just leaves me to say that our Procurement Academy folks, Procurement Week at the Academy, as this week has been termed, it continues on Wednesday, where there will be a focus on community wealth building, touching on some of the things you perhaps mentioned there, Jim. But before that, I should maybe remind the audience as well, there's the SDP Meet the Buyer event tomorrow. So maybe catch some of you tomorrow. Hope to see many of you at our community wealth building focus on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Cheers.
All right.